If you're new to franchising, I feel like there's this kind of underground, almost secret world out there of what we call resales, of franchise businesses that are being sold. How do you find those deals, and what do they look like? How do you get to the finish line? Banks are friendlier to lending to a franchise, and especially in this kind of scenario where there's something existing. With a franchise, you don't have to be an expert at the subject matter. If it's a good brand, and that's part of your due diligence, you've got a strong OSM, Operating Standards Manual.
All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Franchise Empire Show. We've got our first returning guest back, the myth, the man, the legend. Welcome back, Jim.
Thank you, my man. I didn't know that I'm the first returner. What did you do with all the others? Are they stored in like your closet or under your bed?
They're gone.
They're gone. Oh, wow.
Yeah,
all right, people.
That's all I can say.
That's what happens if you don't press the like button and put a comment down below.
No, I'm just kidding. I wasn't bleep. I just didn't really say it. Cool. Well, I'm pumped. So, Jim and I talked about him coming on more regularly, just because he's awesome. But he's got really just so much experience in the franchise space and owning his franchises and building up his current empire. And so today we figured we would talk about buying existing franchises and talk a little bit about what it is, why it could be a good strategy and option, how to approach it. And it's a fun topic because Jim and I have both sold franchises before, like ones that we've owned. So we have some real unique perspectives, right?
Yeah, no, we have both, and I think you've done a couple, and it's a whole different process. And we've each helped several clients do the same thing, and there's a whole world out there in what we call resales, right? So I'm pumped. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about this.
Sweet. And so who is this episode for? Because I know we have a variety of people that watch. So I think buyers and franchisees for sure. So one, if you want to own a franchise, you haven't bought one, like perfect episode for you. If you are an existing franchisee, this is a great episode, because a lot of franchisees, what happens in the franchise space, and I don't want to leads us into diving in too early, which is they wind up buying things within their system. We'll talk about that more and how you can use that for growth, or that could be your exit plan one day, all that stuff. And honestly, even if you are with a franchisor or are a franchisor, so basically, this is for everyone.
We serve all. All are welcome.
We do not discriminate.
Absolutely not. The lawyers are very happy now. Check the box. No, but it really is, and actually even a franchisor might get something out of this topic for sure. Maybe even a younger franchisor, depending on their strategy of growth. But it is kind of for everyone, because there is sort of almost, if you're new to franchising, I feel like there's this kind of underground, almost secret world out there of what we call resales, of franchise businesses that are being sold. It is kind of weird to get into it. How do you find those deals, and what do they look like? How do you get to the finish line? How do you even just learn about it? Like I said, but I think for a lot of folks, it's completely murky, clear as mud. So maybe we can shine a little bit of light on that.
Yeah, let's do it. And as a segue into everything, which is right now, the whole idea of buying a business or existing business, it is a massive trending and growing topic and thing that is going on right now. And you've got so many big names that are now getting involved in this space, which I've seen recently. You got Grant Cardone has a business partner or someone that's talking about buy your own business. I've been seeing their ads now. I'm like, that's so interesting that they're in this space. There are a few other people. So everyone is talking about the idea of buying an existing business that's for sale. And so, but no one's really out there talking about buying franchise resales. It's this, like Jim said, this kind of hidden underground thing. So, all right. So Jim, let's start off. So why is buying an existing franchise, why is that potentially a good option, and for who?
Yeah, yeah. Excuse me. I go back to why is franchising good and who's it good for? Because you and I both hear from folks who struggle with all sorts of different parts of the process of becoming a business owner. But one of them is arguably on the very front side of any project, one of the more important pieces, and that is financing or lending, right? And so a bank will look at any opportunity to lend you money, and the very first thing they're going to think about is like, who are you? Do we feel good about lending you money? And the very next thing is like, what are you going to do with that money? So what do you want to buy? And you want to start up your own underwater basket weaving business. Okay, cool. Sounds a little risky if I'm a bank, but you want to buy a nationally renowned and anchored franchise brand. Even better, a nationally renowned anchored franchise brand that has an open franchise unit with revenue and employees and already built out, and that's what you want to borrow money for. And so I go back to a lot of that reasoning of why is franchising so powerful. It's a little bit easier. Let me caveat, nothing's perfect or easy, certainly, but it's a little bit easier, or at least banks are friendlier to lending to a franchise, and especially in this kind of scenario where there's something existing, just a little bit less risky in their eyes. And so that can manifest in a number of different things on the financing side that might even be more beneficial for you as a buyer too. So I tend to think about, like, right out of the gate, it's a lot of the same values as what franchising already has, and then we're trying to educate more and more people about, of course.
Yeah, and that's a really good point in the sense where, like, I've looked at a bunch of non-franchise resales, and I don't want to say it's the Wild West, but it can be. Obviously, there are millions of people that succeed with traditional non-franchise businesses, but if someone's out there who's never owned a business or doesn't have a lot of experience, like, sure, it could be appealing to go buy a business that's, let's say, netting $200K a year in profit, and maybe you get it for like a 3 times multiple, and you buy the business for $600,000. But like, if that's not if you had not been working in that industry, you are now hopping into a business that likely no matter how much they try to sell it or pitch it, that business probably grew because the owner was very, very involved in that business. Now you're going to step in, and there might not be the procedures there or SOPs or whatever it is. Like, what happens when you buy the business and then you're stuck? Or I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do this. The security of a franchise resale, meaning that same exact business, number one, you can validate, right? Like, you can validate that, hey, there are other franchisees besides me in the system that have also built the same business. So, like, there's a proven track record there of other people that have done it, right? And then you're not stuck. You're not alone on an island. Like, after you buy this business, you're not just buying like Joe's mom and pop whatever. Which, again, there's nothing wrong with that. Mm-hmm. But the idea is that,
but you're not Joe.
you're definitely not Joe. Yeah, you're definitely not Joe. So, okay, cool. So what are some of the kind of scenarios that occur? So someone goes, okay, yeah, all right, I'm open to the idea of buying an existing franchise. I like it. Like, what are some of the scenarios that you've seen? I know you've worked with some of our clients in buying resales overall, and then you've done it yourself, or at least in selling.
Yeah. Resales are interesting because they are, like you said, it's a little murky. It's kind of the Wild West, and sometimes things are listed on the open market, sometimes they are not, and just finding them is a whole challenge sometimes. And a lot of that is timing, right? So the wider net you can cast, the more opportunity you will find, of course. So if you really need to be in southeastern Des Moines within 1 or 2 zip codes, and you want to only be in the pet services space, well, that there may be a waiting game that's part of that. But if you're very open to a number of different concepts, and you would be open to the entire market of Des Moines or all of Iowa or whatever, then your waiting time, your waiting game for the right opportunity, right time might reduce quite a bit. And that's also the great thing about franchising is when we work with our clients, you again, like you just alluded to, you don't have to be the expert like Joe's mom and pop shop. You don't have to be Joe. You don't have to have Joe's skill set. You don't need the technical knowledge of Joe. You have that operating standards manual. And so a lot of our clients, I think, once they get past that and understand what is, sort of their area, what types of businesses they would be open to, are they open to many different ones? It's okay, what am I comfortable in buying? Am I only interested in something that is profiting, that is just a cash cow? That's kind of the dream, right? But there's also another dream that I think is really interesting, and I've seen on the flip side, a franchise that is maybe brand new, just launched or just opened, or maybe it's in the first year and there's a sad story attached to that. Maybe the owner got sick or had an accident or change of heart or whatever and are looking to sell, or it's just struggled. Maybe it hasn't been well run. It could be any or all of these, or maybe, those are all, there could be confounding variables. So you may never truly know. But what's the opportunity there? Well, the opportunity is to buy a business that is underperforming. Maybe it's distressed. I don't know. But you can buy it at a reduced price and build it up, right? And then now you've got a truly valuable asset that you bought, I don't want to say cheap, but very affordable investment. So we're talking very serious ROI.
On the dollar in terms of what a new one would be to get open, right? In that scenario.
Yeah.
60, 70 cents on the dollar.
Right. And so someone has already done the build out. They've acquired at least some customers. And if it's a little underperforming, they at least have community awareness, brand awareness in their market. But if it's not doing well, on the flip side, you can sit there and say, okay, well, it would normally cost me $700,000 to open, this underwater basket weaving franchise. By the way, I'm going to trademark that, and I am franchising tomorrow, so don't you steal that. But it's not doing that well. So I'm selling for $550,000, right? And so someone who comes in and just really excited about underwater basket weaving franchise, they can blow it up for an investment that was much less than the typical street value of opening that underwater basket weaving franchise. And so there's those two parts. Like, is it a turnaround opportunity, or is it doing very well and it is you're buying a line of profit for yourself? We see those are kind of two very big potentials.
Yeah. So just to kind of to recap is, so what you're saying is, okay, you can buy, number one, something that's doing really well, cash flow in a good amount. You'll probably pay a premium, a strong multiple, right? For those of you who may not be familiar with that language, because we might have some newbies, right, that are watching, which is generally speaking, a business will sell for a multiple of its profits or what it's making. So as an example, if it's making 50 grand a year in profit and you sell it at a 2 times multiple, that's 100 grand. Or if you sell it at 4 times multiple, it's 200 grand. And so that would be one thing, which is what you're saying. And then buying a turnaround opportunity, which is typically a business that's the multiples not supporting either the purchase price, or it's just not doing well. Maybe it's losing money, maybe it's breaking even. And so in that case, you can get it for cheaper than what it took maybe to build it. And an example of that actually is when we bought our second location in Florida. So we opened up the one in California from scratch. We bought that resale as a turnaround. And so the purchase price we bought it for was 1/3 of what it had just taken us to get the California store open. But there are pros and cons, right? So actually, I think it would be good for us before the end of this to talk a little bit about kind of the cons of resales, or at least what to look out for and be careful of. Because just like a stock, just because something is selling cheap doesn't mean it's good value. And there's a term in buying stocks, which is you don't want to catch a falling knife, right? Which is a stock that's just continuing to go down. You buy it because you're like, it's cheap, but then it just steady goes down. And their franchises, believe it or not, they go out of business, right? All businesses do. And so you want to that's why due diligence is so important. I don't know that we're going to have a lot of time to dive into the nuts and bolts of due diligence. That'll be a whole nother episode, actually.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on all that I just said?
Well, it's interesting because you had that same experience and you captured a new franchise unit to add to your burgeoning franchise empire, and you did so at a cheaper investment than it would have cost you to build in Florida. Now, there's probably a disparity between opening a unit in California and wherever you were in Florida, maybe, but a third of the price, probably not that big of a disparity. But then what did you have to do? You had to build it up and you had to put the work in. But that does go back to our original point in the beginning of the show was with a franchise, you don't have to be an expert at the subject matter because you've got, if it's a good brand and that's part of your due diligence, you've got a strong OSM, operating standards manual, or whatever the franchisor calls it. You've got the cookbook, you've got the recipe. You open it up and you follow the rules, and maybe you sprinkle a little bit of your own special on top. But if you do that, you are likely to be successful. Again, if it's a brand that you've vetted and you've done the due diligence and it's a proven model because they have other units that are being successful and they are following the OSM, the operating standards manual, or the SOPs. And if you're doing that, you can build it up. And that's a really neat way, I think, to grow your own franchise empire, is by acquiring what you're saying. In a way, you're almost acquiring it within your own brand. Did I catch that right?
Yeah, and that's it, yes, and it just so happened. I mean, this hadn't even hit the market yet. It was getting ready to. We told the franchisor that we were going to be moving, and the original plan was to sell our California store. And but at the time we had just built it out. No one was going to pay. I tried what we had just built it out for like a brand new location that wasn't even open. I mean, I was trying to sell it while we were in construction. And, of course, people are suspicious. Like, well, why are you selling? Like, no, dude, we're moving across the country.
Yeah, what's going on? He's buried all of his non-returners underneath it in the concrete slab, I guess.
It all wound up working out. So it was an accident to own that thing 2,500 miles away. That wasn't the intention. But, yeah, and they told us, they said, oh, wow, there's one. Where are you guys looking at moving? We're like, Jacksonville. We're like, there's actually one for sale there. I'm like, what? You're messing with me. And so that was something we found out about internally, which is, I think, a great segue point, right, to the fact that, okay, if you're a franchisee and if you do wind up buying a resale, selling internally could be either a great exit strategy, number one, or a great growth strategy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's actually, so when I sold my franchise unit in the fitness brand that I was in, I sold to what now I believe, I don't think they were at the time, but that's how they were growing predominantly. There were new units that this group was opening, but they were buying existing units from folks in the network like me. And when they purchased me, they actually purchased some others in that same market. And actually, I think now they're the largest franchisee in that brand. And not that you have to be the number one largest franchisee, but it is a way that you can pick up like your neighbor's business and all of a sudden you're a multi-unit owner. And not that it's, again, overnight or that quick and easy, but it's a great growth strategy. And I think franchisors are often very excited to see that. There are some fees that will change hands, certainly, but more so they get to concentrate a brand in a trusted operator. So if you do well in the brand and you're well liked within the brand and good relationships, it almost can be a franchisor encouraging that sort of activity within its brand because they feel like they have a really strong operator now influencing even more of their network.
Yeah, 100%. We were able to, when we did our resale, we were able to negotiate some points because that was kind of how they felt. That the person who had owned it wasn't following a lot of the rules. They were going off brand and, all sorts of things. And I was able to go in and I think negotiate some royalty abatement for maybe a few months, or I think maybe I negotiated them waiving the transfer fee too. There was some stuff. I went hardcore at them. But what's interesting, so a few people come to mind on this strategy. So one is a guy that he hasn't been a client of ours, but he's been following my YouTube channel since like the beginning. I think since I had like 1,000 subscribers, we had kind of got like an email chain going, and he bought a like a children's haircut franchise. I don't want to say the name.
Okay.
And Juan, if you're listening, you'll it's you. Yes.
and Juan, please like and comment down below so you don't turn into one of the non-returners.
But what's interesting, so he still works his corporate job, but he bought into one of those franchises. It's profitable. It's making money. It's growing. And he's like, yeah, I've actually already talked to the guy that owns the one like 30 minutes away or 40 minutes away, and he wants to sell in 6 months at the beginning of 2024. And it's one of the top performing stores. And so him and Juan are already in conversation about him buying it, right?
About, how to structure it, how to make it happen.
Yeah. So like so this is why there is a lot of kind of deals behind the scenes that go around where this is like why, number one, even if you don't get into a franchise with the resale right away, doesn't mean you still can't buy resale. Like get in there, like get in with the brand that you want. Opportunities can come to play. One of my buddies, Adam, who owns a bunch of budget blinds, I've had him on the Zero Profitable Franchise podcast. That's the only way they grew. Him and his business partner own 5 territories in California. He has another 2 in Tennessee, but he's only grown through buying resales and then by like doubling them in revenue and doing very good. Have a huge business now. So it's a really, really interesting strategy to be able to do that. And I think that's even more interesting that you wind up selling your fitness concept to what you're saying is the largest franchisee in the system now.
That's right. Yeah. And so, and it's a sort of a buy and build strategy that you were talking about with Adam, where he was able to bring value. And that actually, because you mentioned a few minutes ago, we're talking a lot about all the awesome parts of resales and the cool pros, but there are some cons as well. And it makes me think of one of them being like, okay, because you don't just magically turn around the budget blinds and turn it into a crushing unit, right? And we've had some clients here in your program that have bought and built successfully. And I don't think it's easy, right? I mean, and you did that. You also experienced that. That's one of the cons that I often talk about with our clients is, okay, remember that even if it's really performing well, or if it's really not, either way, you're going to be the new boss, and there's going to be change management issues, right? And all of my management consultant friends can nerd out about this stuff, but at the end of the day, you got to be that doer and that pusher and that relentless personality that's going to make sure things continue running as they are. If everything's happy and we like what's going on, or you're the person who's got to make some changes and handle it right, because you don't want everybody to walk away on day one. You don't want to have to close your doors for a few weeks. You don't want to have to do anything that's detrimental to your new investment, but balance the things that you do have to do, because inevitably you'll do things at least a little bit differently than the previous owner, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh, when we bought our resale, they didn't like me because the previous owner was... Jim already knows my
He's a little rough behind the scenes, team. That falling knife scenario was that was real. That cut deep, real deep. This guy's he's street behind the microphone.
So I like things a certain way. I'm very particular. Like I'm hardcore. I'm a little hardcore, right? In the way that I do things. And so the previous owner was complete opposite. Like, they were wearing their hats backwards and sitting on the counters, just like chit-chatting, and like just like had a chair parked by the sink in the back where they'd just like be chilling on their phone. I'm like, no. Like, pull out those machines, start mopping. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're getting paid. You're just going to sit there on your phone. You can't do that.
Yeah.
And so that turnaround was hard. I spent a solid year grinding in the store. And then after a year, basically after 13 months, because it took a couple of months just to adjust overall, and then the ramp, and then I increased sales by 40%.
Wow. Wow.
It was a grind. So I increased sales by 40%. We were trending that year, January, February, then March, and then COVID, which
Oh
was
yeah, that
then,
thing.
oh man, but that was rough. So real quick before we go, there's one other strategy that I want you to just hit on real quick, and then we can touch on it deeper maybe in another episode. But talk about what they're doing over at Dogtopia, and it's a strategy that a lot of franchisors actually use. They use it in the daycare space a lot too. But can you talk about that?
Yeah, yeah, and I think it's best termed sort of conversion.
Yeah.
And so what and it's something that Dogtopia certainly is always looking for as an opportunity because it has a lot of the same principles as just buying that strict resale. What a conversion is when either a franchisor directly gets involved in the negotiating or a franchisee of that brand will approach an independent like service. And so in the childcare world or the doggy daycare world, you would be approaching an independent child daycare, an independent doggy daycare with the purpose of buying that business and converting it into your brand. So there's a little bit of remodel, there's a little bit of cost, new sign, probably some new operating processes, but it's another way that some franchisors are looking at growth in kind of a creative way. And you're right. In the very beginning, and I'm getting targeted by these folks too. In the very beginning of this episode, you mentioned that there's a real trend right now of buying businesses, and with all of that out there, and maybe it's like a post-pandemic sort of event or something, or there's something happening there. But whatever the reason, it's very, very common, and so that's another way that depending on the brand that you get into, a conversion is yet kind of a third way that a resale can be tackled.
Yeah, well, man, and there's so much more we can dive into. We have to run because Jim and I both have meetings to attend to, but we wanted to bring this one out to you about buying businesses and resales. And I think the plan is we'll do another one just on kind of the process, due diligence, structuring the offer, like a bunch of kind of the nuts and bolts of it, which I think you guys would get a lot of value of. But Jim, dude, thanks for coming on. Excited for the next one.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Let's keep doing it.
Yes,
And
sir.
I will right now go like and comment below.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Like, subscribe, comment, notification bell, all of it.
All of it.